Hey there, my name is Anthony Romano, and this is another video on fat fasting and how to understand making it practical, okay? So I already have a video on fat fasting and introducing you to it and explaining all the different uses for it, which you can check out in the link in the description, and you should definitely watch that after as well. But this video is going to tell you more so a generalized, streamlined way to apply this into your diet, no matter what kind of diet you like doing. So, from the intro, you probably understood that fat fasting is a technique you can use on any diet to essentially cheat a fast. You can eat food and still be in the fasted state as long as that food is solely fat. Now, carbohydrate and protein will get digested in your stomach, and this will end a fast. Fat, on the other hand, digests a lot slower, doesn't really get broken down until it goes to your intestines once it gets emulsified with bile. So, essentially, fat is not only something that's not going to kick you out of a fasted state, but once it starts to kick you out, once you hit a certain point of fat consumption, it's going to do that slowly. It's not going to be just something that immediately takes your body out of the fasted state. You're still going to be in a low insulin state and a high fat burning state because fat doesn't raise your insulin. Well, it does very, very slowly over time. Essentially, carbohydrate and protein are going to raise your insulin the most, which will be the most detrimental for breaking a fat burning state. Your body burns the most fat when it's in a low insulin state. This is why even when you restrict calories from 3,000 to 2,000, you're overall secreting less insulin than you did when you had 3,000 calories more of food. Food in general will raise your insulin, but cutting out some of the more insulinogenic foods is another valid way to milk out more fat burn. It's an expert level technique that I use personally and for clients when it comes to getting very aggressive with fat loss. But a simple way to understand this is a lot of the techniques that people are doing today. Intermittent fasting is one way to milk out more fat burn from a low insulin state. Fasted cardio, same premise applies. Ketogenic diets as well, which is something I'm a very big fan of, been doing for a long time, 7+ years. So essentially, fat fasting is something that knows no main diet. Of course, if you're coming from a ketogenic diet, it will be better for autophagy, okay? Autophagy is cellular cleansing. This is your body's natural detoxification, and it can only be achieved through fasting for a longer period of time. The longer you fast, the deeper level of autophagy you will be in. This is, again, a health-oriented goal. It's not necessarily aimed at fat loss or body composition, but sometimes you want a little bit of both. In general, if you fast for about 18 to 20 something hours every day, that's a great way to hit a balance of a little bit of autophagy and a good amount of extra fat burn. But when we're talking about fat fasting, like I said, this is a way to trick your body into remaining in the fasted state. Really for longer than it should, because you can eat food as long as it's only fat. Now, here are some just suggestions off the top of my head. Regardless of what diet you eat, if you want to start off the day and have a bulletproof coffee, that's one way to do it to the utmost effectiveness. But not everybody is full off of just oils. Now, consuming just oils, so MCT oil and grass-fed butter, very health-promoting foods, and they will keep you fuller. They absolutely will, because fat digests slowly, and it keeps you satiated because it's a very high-energy food. That is the opposite side of the coin that nobody talks about. Everybody avoids fat because they say it's the most caloric macronutrient, but that's ignoring the fact, which is the opposite side of the coin, that it's a very high caloric food, which means it's fantastic energy for your body because your body doesn't need that much of it to get a huge amount of energy. So this is essentially why our body stores fat. It prefers fat. It's the most high octane fuel. Our brain is made almost entirely of fat, and we can store seemingly endless amounts of fat because that's what our body wants. So I'm telling you, there will be very high appetite suppressing effects from having oils simply during fat fasting. But if you're the type who really wants to have something to eat, okay? Some suggestions off the top of my head are you could have things like avocados, guacamole. You could make avocado chips, all right? There are some things you want to avoid. You want to avoid things with even a little bit of protein. You want to avoid cheeses, okay? But you can have some snacks like a handful of nuts. But you want to be careful that the nuts or seeds are things that don't have carbohydrate in the shell. Like example, some almonds have phytic acid a bit in the shell, which is something that your stomach's going to have to break down. You want to minimize the amount of digestive work your stomach's doing, so the amount that it's breaking things down. An example, a food I love, cod liver, okay? Cod liver is one of the most nutrient-dense foods on earth, okay? Liver in general is very high in fat-soluble vitamins A, E, D, and K, and also very high in omega-3s. You could even see the ratio there is like, I don't know if it's really focusing, but it's like 3.5 grams of omega-3, 0.6 grams omega-6, which, in case you don't know, omega-3s are the anti-inflammatory fat. They lead to predominantly anti-inflammatory compounds in your body, and most of us have too much omega-6, okay, which often leads to more so inflammatory compounds in your body. Not all the time, but mostly. So this food, cod liver, as nutrient dense as it is, it will not keep you in a fat fasted state because there is a bit of protein. But this is the segue to the next part of the video, the next concept here. So although there is a bit of protein, you can have this and remain in a fasted state. You can have pure fats like nuts or other, like I think macadamia nuts might be mostly fat to the point where there's just a very small amount, like 0.01 gram of carb or protein or fiber or something indigestible that just passes through. That is your go-to with fat fasting. Grab a handful of nuts after you have some oil or something. Those type of things. Avocado chips are fantastic. You can make them taste like crunchy chips. It's great. There's a lot of other little snacks like that I'll be putting out in future videos for suggestions. But you can snack on something like that. But when we're bringing into the foods that have a little bit of protein or a little bit of something that, you know, in general might kick you out of that fasted state, but will still keep you in a low insulin state, this is where we get to the real big guns when it comes to aggressive fat loss. So let's say I'm somebody who doesn't particularly care about autophagy, the cellular cleansing. You can kind of bite the bullet with something like cod liver, okay? Cod liver is very, very high fat, very no carb, and a couple grams of protein. This is a food that will keep you completely satiated for hours. And if you break a fast with this, not only is it going to take a while for your body to digest it, because like I said, fat slows down the digestion of everything, even if there's a bit of protein here, which might end that fasted state or dampen it severely, and it might shut off a bit of that cellular cleansing, you're still going to get a load of fat burn because you're still preserving that low insulin state. Now, let me drift a little bit more on low insulin state. Low insulin, like I said, because insulin, once it's released from carbohydrate or high amounts of food or very high protein, it signals to your body that it's in the presence of luxury fuel. It lowers your blood sugar and it turns off fat burning. That's what insulin in high amounts does, because it's an anabolic hormone. It's trying to build things, okay? Whether it's muscle or fat tissue, that's determined by other factors. But if you have something like cod liver, which will digest slowly and has a small bit of protein and high amount of fat, you're going to stay in that low insulin state. So your body's not going to see a need to turn off fat burning, even if it does raise insulin by a little bit. This is also where individual differences take play, because somebody who's very lean or somebody who's very keto adapted will on the whole have lower insulin. So realistically, somebody like myself who's been doing keto for 7+ years could have, you know, cod liver and probably a little bit more food as well that does contain protein, no carbs, and fat, and my body will probably have lower insulin levels than somebody who is very overweight and just getting into this or just doing fat fasting from a regular carb-based diet. On the whole, your levels of insulin will be lower if you're coming from a keto diet. So regardless of what your body composition is, if your levels of insulin are lower, it doesn't matter if they go up a little bit if on the whole your body is used to a lower fasting insulin level. Hopefully that wasn't too confusing, but I'm going to get to the main practical part here, which is protein and fat in the morning. You know, obviously emphasize more so the fat, but doing so, having only protein and fat, will preserve that low insulin state. And as I've said in other videos, preserving that low insulin state will maximize the fat burning properties of cortisol. So especially if you're waking up or fasting in the morning, your cortisol will rise because that is a stress hormone. It's something to keep you alert and basically make your body start using and breaking down tissue to make fuel. So if you're in a low insulin state, the tissue that your cortisol is going to target, well, your cortisol is not going to be the thing targeting it, but your body's going to target fat as the primary fuel source if your insulin is low and your cortisol raises in the morning. So essentially, if you take on the day and you have any other tasks thrown at you while you're in a low insulin state, your body will try to use fat more so than glucose, which is very good if you're trying to lose a large amount of weight in a short period of time. Even if you're just trying to milk out extra fat burn, right? You have an event to go to, or you just want to get, leaner in by a certain deadline. This is a tool that can absolutely maximize fat burn. And if you throw in other tactics here, like fasted cardio, right? Even fat fasted cardio or cardio while in that low insulin state, you'll be maximizing the amount of fat that your body burns. Of course, there are other techniques to throw in here. There's other supplements you can throw in here, but the point is maintaining a low insulin state. This is the way that you make fat fasting practical across a wide variety of diets. Of course, I prefer ketogenic dieting, and it's my mainstay for most of the year, but you don't have to do it in order to use fat fasting. Theoretically, what a lot of people do who have, even high carb diets, what they will often do is if they use intermittent fasting, once they break that intermittent fast, they'll break it with solely a fat and protein containing food. Even if they don't care about maintaining that fast or that low calorie state, technically, if somebody wants to eat like 300 grams of carbs a day, right? Let's say that's what somebody's diet is, and they have a big, low carb meal in the morning, right? Even if they have like 1,000 calories in the morning, they're not going to be in a fasted state, but they're going to be breaking that fast with foods that are much lower insulin producing, much lower insulinogenic foods. So if you have a big omelet in the morning, even if you have some cod liver in the morning, if you have a bunch of other healthily sourced fats and proteins, right? No matter what you like to eat, if you keep it to protein and fat, you're going to be preserving that low insulin state. And then, let's say you work out, you can slam the rest of your carbs in the evening as a carb backloading technique, which I have a video coming out very soon on. But hopefully this gave you the gist. No matter what diet you like, keep that low insulin state in the morning to prioritize fat loss. Of course, the closer to the fasted state you can be in, the better for fat loss, but you can basically push this till the brink, to your boundary, where you're like, shit, I gotta eat, and then you can have a handful of nuts, and then you can have a cod liver, and you can, based on the amount of other macros in there, right, you're gonna wanna prioritize fat, but you can bite the bullet and still break that fast the less you're able to maintain that fasted state. Capiche? So, hopefully that was clear. Leave me questions and comments, but I want you to go to my other video on fat fasting. This video is one of the ones that I think is very important on my page because it's a technique that really nobody talks about on YouTube, and it has a wide variety of applications. It's going to explain to you in depth all of the different uses for fat fasting, and in the future I'm going to be putting out vlogs and other documentation of the techniques and the methods and the foods I use for fat fasting, because like I said, there's so many uses for this. I'm going to have to show you guys that you can use this coming from a carb day, you can use this coming from a low carb day, you can use this coming from a high training day or a high carb day or any type of thing. You can use fat fasting for a wide variety of scenarios, and although I don't have much out at the moment to demonstrate this, that other video is your key to understanding it better, okay? In addition to this one. So, like this video, subscribe to my page, and go watch my other videos, particularly the ones on fat fasting. This is going to be huge, and in 2020, I think it's going to be the new renaissance of, dieting fads or whatever you want to call it. So, thank you. Anthony Romano, peace.